The morning sun painted the sky orange over New Terra Colony. Lisa Hayes walked into her classroom early, like she did every day. She loved these quiet moments before her students arrived. The small school sat on a hill overlooking the town where 3,000 humans had made their home among the stars. Lisa arranged 20 small desks in neat rows. Each desk belonged to a child between 6 and 10 years old. Today they would learn about the different alien races that lived peacefully across the galaxy. She had prepared pictures of the friendly Altarians with their blue skin and the tall Centaurians who looked almost like humans, but had silver eyes. Outside her window, she could see Captain Jake Morrison's patrol ship flying overhead. The sleek vessel moved slowly across the colony, checking for any signs of trouble. Jake had been protecting New Terra for 3 years now. His ship, the Defender, was small but fast. Most days it was just routine patrols, but Jake never complained. Protecting the families here was the most important job he had ever done. Dr. Alex Carter was already at work in his research station at the edge of town. He studied how different alien species got along with each other. For the past 5 years he had been writing reports about peace in the galaxy. His favorite subject was the Sacred Covenant, the most important law that every species followed. The Sacred Covenant was simple but powerful. It said that children of any species were off limits during wars or conflicts. No matter how angry two groups became with each other, they could never hurt children. This law came after terrible wars long ago when entire species almost disappeared because their young were killed. Alex remembered reading about those dark times. The child wars had lasted 50 years. Billions of young beings died on hundreds of worlds. When the wars finally ended, every surviving species agreed that nothing was worth hurting children. They wrote the Sacred Covenant, and every species signed it. For over 1,000 years, no one had broken this law. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. But they followed the Sacred Covenant more strictly than most species. Human colonies like New Terra were built with special protection systems just for children. Every human ship carried orders that protecting young beings came before everything else. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Helen Brooks was preparing for another day of meetings. She represented all human colonies and worked to keep peace between humans and other species. Helen had been doing this job for 10 years. She was proud that humans had never caused any major problems with other species. The council station was huge. It floated in space between several star systems so representatives from different worlds could meet easily. Helen's office had windows that showed the stars and the ships coming and going. She liked watching the peaceful traffic of trade vessels and diplomatic shuttles. Today's meeting would discuss trade routes and mining rights. Nothing too exciting, but important for keeping the peace. Helen had learned that the boring meetings were often the most important ones. Big decisions were made quietly, not with dramatic speeches. Back on New Terra, the school day was starting. Lisa's students ran into the classroom with bright smiles and loud voices. Katie Garcia bounced into her seat near the front. She was 7 years old and loved learning about space. Her father, Tony, worked fixing machines in the colony, but Katie wanted to be a starship pilot when she grew up. "Miss Hayes, are we really going to see pictures of the bug people today?" asked 8-year-old Billy Johnson. He was thinking about the Hivark, an insectoid species that looked scary, but were actually very peaceful. Lisa smiled. "They prefer to be called the Hivark, Billy, and yes, we will learn about them. They are very intelligent and kind, even if they look different from us." The morning lessons went well. The children were fascinated by the pictures of different alien species. Lisa explained how each species had their own worlds, their own cultures, and their own ways of raising their young. But all of them agreed on one thing: children must be protected. Captain Jake Morrison finished his morning patrol and landed at the small spaceport. Everything looked normal. The farmers were working in their fields. The merchants were opening their shops. Children were walking to school with their backpacks and lunch boxes. It was the kind of peaceful scene that made his job worthwhile. Jake was 32 years old and had been in the Human Defense Fleet for 12 years. He had seen combat before joining the patrol service. Those were harder times, fighting against pirates and raiders in the outer systems. But protecting colonies, like New Terra, was better work. Here he was, keeping families safe instead of just fighting. His communication device buzzed. A message from fleet headquarters about a Zephyrian trading ship that had been spotted near the outer edge of the system. The Zephyrians were a warrior species, but they had signed peace treaties with humans. Their ships sometimes passed through human space on trading missions. Jake made a note to keep an eye on the ship, but he was not worried. The Zephyrians had never caused trouble in human space. Like every other species, they followed the sacred covenant. They had their own children to protect. Lunchtime came at the school. Lisa watched her students eat and play in the small yard behind the building. They were safe here, protected by laws that every species in the galaxy respected. She thought about how lucky they were to live in such peaceful times. None of them knew that high above their planet, Zephyrian ships were moving into attack positions. The sacred covenant was about to be broken for the first time in 1,000 years. The alarm screamed across New Terra colony at 2 in the afternoon. Lisa Hayes was reading a story to her class when the terrible sound filled the air. All 20 children looked up with scared faces. They had practiced emergency drills before, but this was different. This alarm meant real danger. "Everyone under your desks right now," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice calm. The children quickly crawled under their desks like they had been taught. Lisa pressed the emergency button that would seal the classroom doors and windows. Metal shutters slammed down, turning the bright room dark. Captain Jake Morrison was eating lunch when his ship's alarm went off. He ran to his cockpit and saw 3 large ships on his screen. They were Zephyrian warships painted black and red. Jake had never seen Zephyrian military ships in human space before. His hands moved quickly over the controls, powering up his weapons and shields. "Zephyrian vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the Human Defense Fleet. You are in violation of human space. State your purpose immediately." The reply came in the harsh Zephyrian language, then translated by his computer. "Human ship, do not interfere. We are here for the young ones. Move away or be destroyed." Jake's blood turned cold. The young ones, they meant the children. No one had attacked children in 1,000 years. It was impossible. It had to be some kind of mistake. Negative, Zephyrian ships. All children in this system are under protection of the sacred covenant. Withdraw immediately. The first Zephyrian ship fired at him. Jake rolled his ship to the side, avoiding the blast. He fired back, his weapons striking their shields. But his small patrol ship was no match for 3 warships. He needed help, and he needed it now. Dr. Alex Carter was in his lab when the attack started. He watched in horror through his window as the Zephyrian ships landed near the school. Soldiers in dark armor poured out of the ships. They were heading straight for the building where the children were hiding. Alex grabbed his emergency communicator and called the Galactic Council station. Someone had to know about this. The sacred covenant was being broken right in front of his eyes. At the school, Lisa heard explosions outside. The metal shutters protecting her classroom began to glow red from weapon fire. The children were crying now, holding on to each other under their desks. Lisa's hands shook as she tried to contact the colony's emergency services. The classroom door exploded inward. 6 Zephyrian soldiers walked in, their armor making loud metal sounds with each step. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets. One of them spoke in broken human language. "Children, come now. No hurt if you come quiet." Lisa stepped in front of her students. "You cannot do this. The sacred covenant protects these children. Every species in the galaxy has agreed to this law." The soldier laughed, a harsh sound that made the children cry harder. "Covenant broken today. Council says okay. You come too, teacher. Children need familiar face." Lisa felt the world spinning around her. The council said okay? That was impossible. She had devoted her life to teaching children about the peaceful galaxy where they were all protected. How could the council allow this? The soldiers began pulling children out from under their desks. 12 children from Lisa's class were taken, including little Katie Garcia. The soldiers ignored the other 8 children, leaving them crying on the floor. Lisa was dragged along with the 12, her mind racing to understand what was happening. Captain Jake Morrison managed to damage one Zephyrian ship before his own vessel was hit. His engines failed, and he crashed in the fields outside the colony. He pulled himself from the wreckage and watched helplessly as the Zephyrian ships lifted off with their terrible cargo. News of the attack spread through human space faster than light itself. Admiral Ben Parker received the emergency report at Fleet Headquarters. 12 human children had been taken from New Terra. The Zephyrian ships were heading back to their home system with the children and their teacher as prisoners. Ben had been in the military for 30 years. He had fought in wars and seen terrible things. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Children had been taken. The sacred covenant had been broken. He immediately sent messages to every human colony and ship in the fleet. Within hours, angry voices were demanding action. Parents across human space called for war. How dare anyone touch their children? Dr. Emma Stone was called to Fleet Headquarters to help plan a response. She was a doctor who specialized in helping children who had been through terrible experiences. Her job was to explain what the kidnapped children might be feeling. They will be scared and confused, Emma told the military officers. Being taken from their families and teachers is one of the worst things that can happen to a child. Every day they are held will cause more damage. Tony Garcia, Katie's father, led a group of parents to the government buildings on New Terra. They demanded that the human fleet attack the Zephyrians immediately. Tony had built machines all his life, but now he wanted to build weapons. He wanted to get his little girl back. "My daughter is 7 years old," Tony shouted at the officials. "She has never hurt anyone. How can anyone take her? How can the council allow this?" The government officials had no good answers. They were waiting for word from the Galactic Council about what could be done. But the parents did not want to wait. They wanted their children back now. Lieutenant Commander Steve Watson was sent on a secret mission to find out more about the attack. He used his spy networks to contact sources in Zephyrian space. What he learned made him sick. The Zephyrians had not acted alone. The attack had been approved by several species on the Galactic Council. They wanted to study how humans would react when their children were threatened. It was all an experiment to them. Ambassador Helen Brooks confronted the council about the kidnapping. She stood in the Great Hall where representatives from hundreds of species met to keep peace in the galaxy. "You must demand the immediate return of these children," Helen said. "The sacred covenant has been broken. This is the most serious crime possible under galactic law." The insect-like Hivark representative clicked his mandibles in what might have been laughter. "The children are safe, human ambassador. They are being well cared for. This is an opportunity for your species to show that you are truly civilized. Civilized beings do not start wars over small matters." Helen stared at the alien creature. Small matters. 12 children had been stolen from their families. How could anyone call that small? "If you take military action," the Hivark continued, "you will be in violation of 17 different treaties. Your species will be expelled from the council and cut off from galactic trade. Think carefully about your next move." Helen realized with growing horror that this was all planned. The council was testing humanity. They wanted to see if humans would break their treaties to save their children. It was a trap with no good choices. Captain Jake Morrison, recovered from his crash, received coded messages from angry parents across human space. The messages all said the same thing. If the council would not help, then humanity would act alone. The parents did not care about treaties or trade. They wanted their children back. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone threatened human children. Dr. Alex Carter worked day and night in his lab, trying to find out what the Zephyrians wanted with the children. He had contacts in many alien governments who sent him secret information. What he discovered 3 days after the attack made him feel sick. The children were not just prisoners. They were being used for experiments. The Zephyrians were testing how human children reacted to being separated from their families. They wanted to understand human emotions like fear, sadness, and hope. The Galactic Council had approved this. research as necessary for galactic security. Alex immediately sent his findings to Admiral Ben Parker. The message was short but clear. The children were being hurt not by accident, but on purpose. Someone was studying their pain. Admiral Parker read the report in his office while looking at pictures of the 12 missing children on his wall. Little Katie Garcia smiled at him from her school photo. She should have been learning to read, not being experimented on by aliens who saw her as a test subject. Ben had a choice to make. He could follow galactic law and try to negotiate through the council. That might take months or years, and the children would suffer every day. Or he could break every treaty humanity had signed and go get them. The decision became easier when a coded message arrived from New Terra. It was from Lisa Hayes, the teacher who had been taken with the children. She had managed to hide a small transmitter during the kidnapping and was sending signals from inside the Zephyrian facility. "The children cry every day," Lisa's message said. "They ask when their parents are coming to get them. The aliens take them away one by one for tests. Please hurry. They are breaking our children's hearts." Ben called an emergency meeting with his top officers. Captain Jake Morrison, still bandaged from his crash, sat at the table with anger burning in his eyes. Dr. Amy Foster, the fleet's weapons expert, had brought files that she had kept secret for years. "We have technology that we have never shown the Council," Amy said, opening her files. "Stealth systems that make our ships invisible to their sensors. Weapons that can punch through any shield. We kept these things hidden in case we ever needed to protect ourselves." Ben looked around the table at his officers. "If we do this, we will be outlaws. The Council will ban us from galactic society. We will be alone among the stars." Jake Morrison spoke first. "Admiral, I have seen what they did to our colony. I watched them take children from their classroom. If we do not act, who will? If we let this happen, what message does that send to every species in the galaxy?" The other officers nodded. They had all sworn oaths to protect human colonies. Those oaths meant more than any treaties with aliens who experimented on children. Ben made the decision that would change everything. "Operation Thunderchild begins now. We are going to get our children back." Dr. Amy Foster's secret weapons were loaded onto 20 human ships. The stealth technology made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. But Ben needed a distraction to make sure the main Zephyrian fleet would not interfere. Captain Morrison volunteered to lead the rescue mission. He took 5 stealth ships and headed for the Zephyrian home system. Meanwhile, Admiral Parker would take the main human fleet to the edge of Zephyrian space and make a lot of noise, drawing attention away from the real mission. On Earth, President Dan Miller addressed all human colonies through emergency broadcasts. His face was serious as he spoke to billions of humans across the galaxy. "My fellow humans, today we face a choice. We can follow laws made by aliens who see our children as experiments, or we can follow the deeper law that says we protect our young no matter what. The Galactic Council has betrayed the sacred covenant. They have approved the torture of innocent children for research purposes." The president paused, letting his words sink in. "Some will call us criminals for what we are about to do. History will judge whether we were right or wrong. But I know this. No human child will be abandoned while we have ships to fly and strength to fight." The response from human colonies was immediate. Every human ship in the galaxy began moving towards Zephyrian space. Civilian transport ships, mining vessels, and even small pleasure craft headed for the battle zone. They might not have weapons, but they wanted to help rescue the children. Captain Morrison's stealth ship slipped past Zephyrian patrol vessels without being detected. Amy Foster's technology worked perfectly. The enemy could not see them coming. Jake used Lisa's transmitter signals to locate the facility where the children were being held. The building was on the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld, surrounded by military bases. Getting in would be dangerous. Getting out with 12 children, and their teacher would be nearly impossible. But Jake had trained for impossible missions his whole life. Meanwhile, Admiral Parker's fleet appeared at the edge of Zephyrian space with weapons charged and shields up. The Zephyrian military scrambled to respond to what looked like a full invasion. Their biggest warships raced toward the human fleet, leaving their homeworld less protected. Dr. Emma Stone was aboard Admiral Parker's flagship, monitoring communications from the Galactic Council. The alien representatives were in panic. They had never expected humans to react with military force. They sent urgent messages demanding that the human fleet withdraw immediately. The Council threatened economic sanctions, trade blockades, and complete isolation from galactic society. But the humans kept coming. Parents who had never held weapons were volunteering to fight. Engineers were turning mining equipment into weapons. Teachers were learning to pilot attack ships. Tony Garcia, Katie's father, was on one of the volunteer ships heading for battle. He had never been in space combat before, but he would not stay home while his daughter was in danger. Hundreds of other parents made the same choice. Their children needed them. Captain Morrison's team reached the Zephyrian facility just as the main battle began in space. Jake's soldiers moved through the building like shadows, using Amy's advanced equipment to avoid detection. They found the children in small cells, frightened but alive. Katie Garcia ran to Jake when she saw his human face. "Are you here to take us home?" she asked with tears in her eyes. "Yes, little one," Jake said, picking her up. "We are taking you home right now." Lisa Hayes helped gather the other children. Some were too scared to move. Others clung to her dress, afraid to let go. She counted them carefully. All 12 were alive, though they looked thin and sad. The escape was not easy. Zephyrian guards discovered the rescue attempt and began shooting. Jake's team fought their way to their ships while protecting the children. Amy's weapons proved their worth, cutting through enemy armor like paper. As the stealth ships lifted, off with their precious cargo, the main battle in space reached its peak. Admiral Parker's fleet was outnumbered, but human anger made them fight harder than ever before. Ship after ship pressed forward, ignoring damage and casualties. The galaxy watched in shock as humanity revealed military capabilities that no one had suspected. Human ships moved faster and hit harder than anyone thought possible. The careful balance of galactic power shifted in a single day. But the most important victory was the smallest one. 12 human children and their teacher were free, heading home to families who had never stopped believing they would return. The Galactic Council would soon learn that there were some lines that should never be crossed. Humanity had just taught them that lesson in the strongest possible way. The children came home to New Terra 3 days after the rescue. Katie Garcia ran into her father's arms at the spaceport, while cameras from across human space recorded the moment. Tony Garcia cried as he held his daughter, not caring who saw, his tears. All across the colony, families were reunited with their children. But something had changed. The children who left had been happy and trusting. The children who returned were quiet and scared. They jumped at loud noises. They cried when adults they did not know came too close. The experiments had left marks that could not be seen, but were very real. Dr. Emma Stone set up a special clinic to help the rescued children. She worked with each child every day, trying to heal the damage that had been done to their minds. The children told her terrible stories about their time in the Zephyrian facility. Katie Garcia described how the aliens would take one child at a time to a white room. "They would ask us questions about Mommy and Daddy," she told Dr. Stone. "When we cried, they would write things down on their tablets. They seemed happy when we were sad." 8-year-old Billy Johnson had stopped talking completely. He would only nod or shake his head when adults asked him questions. His parents were heartbroken. Their cheerful little boy had become a frightened shadow of himself. Lisa Hayes also needed help recovering from what she had seen. She told Dr. Stone about overhearing the Zephyrian scientists talking about their research. They said the big bug people told them it was okay to take human children. They said 6 different alien species wanted to know how humans would react. Dr. Stone recorded everything the children and Lisa told her. This was evidence that the Galactic Council had committed the worst crime possible under their own laws. She sent her reports to Admiral Parker and Ambassador Helen Brooks. The evidence was clear and horrible. The Hyvarch, the Centaurians, the Altarians, and 3 other council species had planned the whole thing. They wanted to study human emotions by torturing human children. They thought this would help them understand how to control humans in the future. Admiral Parker took the evidence to President Miller on Earth. The president read the reports with growing anger. His own grandchildren were the same age as the victims. How could anyone think it was acceptable to hurt children for research? Ambassador Helen Brooks demanded an emergency meeting with the full Galactic Council. She stood in the Great Hall with the evidence files in her hands. Representatives from hundreds of species watched as she began to speak. "You have violated your own sacred covenant," Helen said, her voice carrying across the huge room. "You approved experiments on human children. You are the criminals here, not humanity." The HFY representative tried to defend the Council's actions. The research was necessary for galactic security. Humans are unpredictable and emotional. We needed to understand your weaknesses. Helen held up pictures of the 12 children. These are not military targets. They are children who should have been safe in their classroom. Katie Garcia is 7 years old. She likes to draw pictures of spaceships. Billy Johnson wanted to be a scientist when he grew up. How do you justify torturing children for science? Several alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had not expected to see the faces of the victims. It was easier to approve experiments when the subjects were just numbers in a report. But the Council leadership was not backing down. They announced that humanity would face consequences for their military action. All human ships would be banned from Galactic Council space. Human colonies would be cut off from alien trade. The human species would be isolated until they learned to follow galactic law. The human response was swift and devastating. President Miller announced that all human trade routes were immediately closed to Council species. No more rare metals from human mining worlds. No more advanced medical supplies from human research stations. No more food exports from human agricultural colonies. Colonel Ray Adams led the effort to shut down human trade. Within 1 week, dozens of alien species were facing shortages of materials they needed to survive. The galaxy had become dependent on human industry without realizing it. Dr. Amy Foster began sharing human military technology with species that had stayed neutral during the crisis. The peaceful Keplerians received new shield generators. The independent vegan colonies got advanced weapon systems. Suddenly, species outside the Council were becoming more powerful than Council members. Captain Jake Morrison made a disturbing discovery while investigating old Council records. The attack on New Terra was not the first time the Council had broken the sacred covenant. He found evidence of other incidents that had been covered up. 15 years ago, Altarian children had disappeared from a colony near Council space. The official report said they were lost in an accident, but Jake found communications proving they had been taken for medical experiments. The Council had hidden the truth from their own people. 20 years ago, a Centaurian school had been attacked by pirates. The pirates had taken only the youngest children and left the older ones behind. The Council investigation had concluded that the pirates wanted slaves, but Jake's evidence showed the children had been delivered to a Council research facility. The pattern was clear. For decades, the Council had been secretly violating their own most sacred law. They would pick species that were too weak to fight back and take their children for experiments. Then they would cover up the crimes with fake investigations and false reports. When Jake presented this evidence to the human government, the galaxy changed forever. President Miller released all the information to every species in known space. The proof was undeniable. The Galactic Council was built on lies and the suffering of children. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Species after species began withdrawing from the Council. The Keplerians announced they would no longer recognize Council authority. The vegan colonies declared independence from all Council treaties. Even some species that had been Council members for centuries began questioning their loyalty. The Altarians were shocked to learn that their missing children had been victims of Council experiments. Their government demanded answers from the Council leadership. When the Council refused to respond, the Altarians pulled their representatives out of Council meetings. The Centaurians discovered that some of their own leaders had participated in the conspiracy. Angry crowds gathered on Centaurian capital worlds, demanding justice for the murdered children. The Centaurian government fell within days, replaced by leaders who promised to expose all council crimes. Ambassador Helen Brooks watched the council crumble from her office on the station. Every day, more species announced they were leaving. The great hall that once held representatives from hundreds of worlds was becoming empty. The few species that remained loyal to the council were the ones who had participated in the crimes. The Hivark tried to maintain order, but their authority was gone. The Zephyrians faced economic collapse as other species refused to trade with them. Dr. Alex Carter published research showing that 37 species were forming a new alliance, based on actually protecting children, not just pretending to. The Free Worlds Alliance had simple rules. Any species that harmed children would be expelled. Any species that covered up crimes against children would be banned. Tony Garcia brought Katie to one of Dr. Stone's sessions and listened as his daughter described her captivity. When she finished, he held her close and made a promise. "No child will ever go through what you went through again," he told her. "Daddy and all the other parents are going to make sure of that." Katie looked up at her father with eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. "Do you promise, Daddy?" "I promise, sweetheart. We all promise." The galaxy was splitting into two parts. On one side were the species that truly believed children should be protected. On the other side were the species that thought children were acceptable targets for their ambitions. Humanity had forced everyone to choose which side they were really on. The old galaxy was ending, and a new one was about to be born. 6 months after the rescue, Katie Garcia stood on a stage in front of representatives from 37 different species. She was still only 7 years old, but her words would help shape the future of the galaxy. Behind her, the flag of the new Free Worlds Alliance hung from the ceiling of the great meeting hall. "My name is Katie Garcia," she said into the microphone, her small voice carrying across the room. "Bad people took me and my friends from our school. They hurt us because they wanted to learn about human feelings, but now I am not scared anymore because all of you promised to keep children safe." The alien representatives listened carefully. Many of them had never heard a human child speak before. Katie's simple words reminded them why they had left the old Galactic Council to join this new alliance. Lisa Hayes watched from the audience, proud of her former student. Lisa now worked as the director of interspecies child welfare for the alliance. Her job was to make sure that what happened to her class would never happen to any child again. The alliance had strict rules. Any species that joined had to sign the new sacred covenant, which was much stronger than the old one. Not only could children not be harmed during conflicts, but any research involving children had to be approved by committees that included parents from multiple species. Every Alliance world now had special protection systems just for children. Ships from different species worked together to patrol colony worlds. If anyone threatened children anywhere in Alliance space, they would face the combined military might of 37 species. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, commanded the Alliance Defense Force. His ship was crewed by humans, Keplerians, Vegans, and reformed Altarians working side by side. They had learned human rapid response tactics and shared their own knowledge in return. The old enemies had become the strongest allies. The Altarians, once they learned the truth about their missing children, had become fierce protectors of the young. Their crystal-based technology combined with human stealth systems to create the most advanced child protection networks in the galaxy. Dr. Emma Stone opened treatment centers on 12 different worlds to help children who had been hurt by the old council's crimes. She worked with alien psychologists to develop new ways of healing trauma. Children from many species came to her centers to get better. Katie Garcia visited Dr. Stone's clinic on New Terra every week. She was getting better, but she still had nightmares sometimes. Dr. Stone taught her breathing exercises and gave her a special bracelet that would call for help if she ever felt scared. "I still dream about the White Room sometimes," Katie told Dr. Stone during one of their sessions. "But when I wake up, I remember that you and Daddy and Admiral Morrison will never let anyone hurt me again." Billy Johnson had started talking again. It took months of gentle care from Dr. Stone and his parents, but he was slowly becoming himself again. He even smiled sometimes, though he stayed close to adults he trusted. The old Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. Only 6 species remained loyal to it, and they were all the ones who had participated in the child experiments. The HFY tried to maintain their authority, but most of the galaxy ignored them. The Zephyrians faced a difficult choice. Their economy was collapsing because no one would trade with them anymore. Their own people were asking hard questions about why their government had tortured children. Finally, their new leader came to the Alliance, asking for forgiveness. Admiral Parker, now the Alliance's Secretary of Defense, met with the Zephyrian representative in a formal ceremony. The alien leader, a female named Thara, knelt before a memorial wall that showed pictures of all the children who had been hurt by Council experiments. "We cannot undo the terrible things our people did," Thara said, "but we can promise it will never happen again. We ask for the chance to prove we have changed." The Alliance voted to accept the Zephyrian request, but with conditions. They had to pay for the medical care of all the children they had hurt. They had to open their files about the experiments to Alliance investigators, and they had to allow Alliance observers to monitor their treatment of children for 10 years. Tony Garcia was one of the parents who voted on whether to accept the Zephyrian apology. It was hard for him to forgive the people who had hurt his daughter, but Katie herself had asked him to give them a chance. "They said they were sorry, Daddy," Katie had told him. "Maybe they can learn to be good like we did." Dr. Alex Carter continued his research, but now he studied how different species could work together to protect their young. His new book, Children of the Stars, became required reading on every Alliance world. It showed how cooperation between species made everyone stronger. The Alliance grew larger each month. Species that had been neutral during the crisis saw the benefits of joining a group that actually kept its promises about protecting children. Even some former council members applied to join after their governments changed. Ambassador Helen Brooks became the first president of the Alliance Council. Her office had pictures of the 12 rescued children on the wall to remind her why this organization existed. Every decision she made started with one question: is this good for the children? The Alliance military was different from any force the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of conquering worlds, they protected them. Instead of threatening other species, they offered help and friendship. Their most important mission was making sure every child in Alliance space could grow up safe and happy. Captain Morrison, now commanding the flagship Alliance vessel New Hope, received a drawing in his mail one day. It was from Katie Garcia, showing stick figures of humans and aliens holding hands around a group of smiling children. At the bottom, she had written, "Thank you for saving us," in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. Jake hung the drawing on the bridge of his ship where his entire crew could see it. Officers from 5 different species looked at that simple picture every day and remembered why they were there. President Miller visited New Terra for the 1-year anniversary of the rescue. He spoke at the school where Lisa Hayes taught a new class of children. This time, her students included young Keplerians, vegans, and even a few Zephyrian children whose parents had moved to Alliance space. 1 year ago, bad people tried to hurt children to learn about hate and fear. President Miller told the mixed group of young beings. Instead, they taught the galaxy about love and protection. They showed us that some things are worth fighting for, and some lines must never be crossed. The children listened carefully, their different faces all showing the same expression of trust and security. They knew they were safe. Adults from many worlds were working together to make sure of it. Dr. Amy Foster's technology centers now shared their knowledge freely with all Alliance members. The secrets that humans had once hidden were now used to protect children across dozens of worlds. Advanced sensors could detect ships approaching schools. Instant communication systems let parents know their children were safe every day. As the anniversary ceremony ended, Katie Garcia raised her hand to ask President Miller a question. "Mr. President, will children always be safe now?" Miller looked at the serious little girl who had become a symbol of hope for the galaxy. "As long as there are people who care about children, Katie, they will be protected. And I think there will always be people who care." Katie smiled, the same bright smile she had worn in her school picture before the terrible day when she was taken. But now there was something else in her eyes, the knowledge that she was part of something bigger than herself. The old galaxy was gone forever. In its place was something better, a community of worlds where children could dream of becoming starship pilots or scientists or teachers, knowing that adults would keep them safe while they grew up. The sacred covenant was no longer just words on paper. It was a promise kept by millions of beings across the stars, all working together to make sure that no child would ever be hurt, the way Katie and her classmates had been hurt. And in classrooms across Alliance space, children learned that the galaxy was a place where they belonged, where they were valued and where they would always be protected.